There's information discovery, which, if you're using any of the interfaces of the large language model sort of powered assistants, that information search is going to be far more powerful than anything. And then there's almost validating, what you're looking for is, going and checking sources. And that's where you still need to go to this legacy interface and find what you need. I mean, that's even sped up by things like OpenAI with the references that it leaves. You can go and click those and actually view the site. But you do wonder if you had to abstract the information from the websites, what is the future of this going to become? The web is becoming a database, not a destination. How can you surface the information on your business or your service, whether it's a service, a product? As we look even further, what is the future of actual websites? And, is it that everything actually becomes integrated into one universal chat interface? Because imagine if we had to say, all right, if we're looking at more a database approach, could we say that we just have some sort of like an API endpoint that becomes our site that shows any latest content, that maybe talks a bit about our brand voice and how it's should be communicated, some imagery, some interactive applications, and these all get brought into the chat stream. So if you're crossing over to an experience, that experience happens in the actual stream. It almost seems archaic to go, we're going to shift away now to a completely different, independently designed site that is, going to very much rely on how much, I guess, that company or even that person invested in developing that. And small business may not have the SEO knowledge, and they may have a good product or a service or a message. And now, without this sort of manipulation of search results, they could be just as relevant as anything else, because you could really target it based on just honing in on that information itself, which is just quite exciting. And if there are guidelines there for, right, here's a boilerplate, almost like you get the boilerplate sites now. You have a boilerplate set of information and voice and imagery.
So you're saying basically we'll get to a point where you go to chatgpt.com and that basically becomes your portal to everything, right? You don't go to websites anymore. You'll go to that site instead, search what you want, and it'll grab the context out of all these APIs and quotes, which are hosting the content instead. The one thing that I can see that might stop that completely just becoming the norm is, I guess, user novelty and experience. Like going to chatgpt.com, even if they make it nicer and more interesting, it's always going to be like, people get bored, right? They want to go to somewhere else, see something new, a new user experience, a new design. Like people are always looking for something that's fresh and interesting. And I think that's the one counter to that is I still think there'll be value and want and desire to go to a different site to get that new experience. It's not just about pure information. It's also about being entertained. And you'll never get that if everything is just going to one sort of site.
If you think about the fact that we have to navigate around at the moment to these unique sort of independent sites, and they're controlled by whoever owns them and their content, it's not an ideal experience to sort of start jumping between the different requirements in terms of support. One may be pushing a high-res video, and maybe certain people can't see that. What I would think is, if the internet starts becoming more like a database, you're pushing a standard, and through that standard you define the certain interactions you could have. So imagine you're talking to ChatGPT or to Claude or any of these different large language models that you choose. There'll be a whole lot of different interfaces, just like the different search engines. But the amazing part is, by having some sort of standard protocol for sharing information, the experience can change. So I could say, look, I'm handing you over to, let's say you're going to like an Amazon, and that experience changes completely. So you have a slightly different, way that the bot's talking, way that visuals are brought up, and even sort of interactions that, whether it's, interactive elements but the whole interface could be changed in a standardized way to give you that different experience. Just like as if you stepped into a store, you're talking to a different salesperson or a different tech expert, or you're going to feel that change of experience that is going to be more an extension of the brand coming through.